Have you noticed how increasingly distracted we are these days? You pick up your phone to check a notification, and before you know it, 30 minutes have passed scrolling through your feed. You sit down to study, and your mind wanders to 1,000 different places. You open your laptop to work and end up watching random videos on YouTube. If this happens to you, it doesn't mean you have ADHD or any other problem. In fact, it's more normal than you might think. Today, we live in a world so full of stimuli that it's difficult to focus on a single task. There's always a notification, a video, a song, a news item, and it steals our attention. Our focus disappears like water leaking from a leaky bucket. However, the habit of focusing on more than one task at a time wasn't always a bad thing. Our ancestors needed to constantly scan their environment for dangers. This fragmented attention kept us alive. But today, it's destroying us from the inside. According to researchers at the University of California, it takes a person an average of 23 minutes to regain full focus after a single interruption. 23 minutes. Now multiply that by the number of times you break your attention by checking your phone, doing another task, putting on music or anything else. But what if there was a way to hack that? To train your brain to ignore distractions and immerse itself so deeply in a task that the world around you simply disappears. This technique exists, and it's not some innovative technique created by a digital marketing coach. This technique comes from the Zen monasteries of Japan, and its name is Ichigyo-Zammai. Ichigyo-Zammai is the concept of doing one thing at a time with complete attention. It's very present in Japanese Zen Buddhism, and that's what we'll be talking about today. Before we get to the video, I want to thank the new channel members for their support. I also want to thank each and every one of you who are liking the videos, commenting, and sharing the content. You are a very important part of this channel's history. Thank you so much, really. Now answer me in the comments, what's your biggest distraction today? Your cell phone, social media, your own mind? Comment below. Back to the video. Chapter 1. The Story of Jake. Jake Morrison was 16 years old when he realized he was losing the race of life. He wasn't a bad student, far from it. He even understood math, physics, and programming. The problem was that Jake couldn't concentrate. He'd sit down to study and a few minutes later, he'd already be checking Instagram. He'd open his calculus book and stop thinking about how amazing it would be to work at Google. He'd watch a video lesson and pause halfway through to check the score of a game. And look, Jake had a dream. One of those big, scary, almost impossible dreams. He wanted to get into MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the most competitive universities on the planet, the place where geniuses are made. But Jake had a problem. His grades weren't even close to what was needed. While other students consistently got high marks, Jake lived in that middle ground zone. A C here, a B there, enough to pass, but not enough to dream of MIT. And his friends, they loved making jokes about Jake. Jake, dude, you want to study software engineering at MIT and you can't even get a B in math? Man, you're going to end up flipping burgers at McDonald's. They laughed. They thought it was funny. But Jake felt every word like a punch to the gut. And the worst part is that his parents were also pressuring him. Not in a malicious way, they just wanted to see their son try harder. Jake, you have potential, but you need to stop getting distracted. You need to take this seriously. And Jake knew this. He knew he had potential. The problem was that he couldn't access that potential, because whenever he sat down to study, his mind sabotaged him. You know that moment when you should be doing something important, but your brain prefers to imagine future scenarios. Jake spent hours daydreaming. He imagined his graduation ceremony at MIT. He imagined his first day of work as a programmer. He imagined his friends apologizing for doubting him. But in the meantime, the math book remained closed, the physics assignment remained blank, and the dream remained distant. Until one day, after getting yet another low grade on a calculus test, Jake had a breakdown. He was tired of being mediocre. tired of disappointing his parents, tired of hearing his friends' jokes. But instead of locking himself in his room and giving up, Jake did something different. He decided to ask for help. Chapter 2. The Meeting with the Teacher. The next day, Jake went to see Mr. Tanaka. Mr. Tanaka was the school's math teacher, a man of Japanese origin, in his 50s, always calm, always centered. He had the kind of presence that conveyed peace. While other teachers shouted to maintain order in the classroom, Mr. Tanaka simply looked, and everyone fell silent. Jake knocked on the door of the teacher's lounge at the end of the day. "Mr. Tanaka, may I speak with you for a minute?" The professor looked up, took off his reading glasses, and gestured for Jake to come in. "Sure, Jake. Sit down. What happened?" Jake took a deep breath. "Sir, I don't know what to do. I really want to improve my grades. I want to be a software engineer, but I can't focus. I sit down to study and my mind keeps jumping from one place to another. I'm distracted all the time. And then my grades don't improve, and then I get stuck in this cycle." Mr. Tanaka was silent for a few seconds. Then he smiled. It wasn't a smile of pity. It was the smile of someone recognizing something familiar. "Jake, can I ask you a question? When you sit down to study, how many tabs do you leave open on your computer?" Jake thought for a second. "I don't know, maybe 10. "And your cell phone? Where do you keep it?" "On the side, with notifications turned on." "And do you usually study while thinking about other things at the same time? Like planning what you're going to do next or remembering something that happened earlier?" Jake blinked. "How do you know?" "Mr. Tanaka, Low River?" "Because I was exactly like that when I was your age." Jake's eyes widened. "Serious?" "Seriously, I grew up in Japan, and when I was young, I also had trouble concentrating. My mind was always wandering, until my grandfather taught me something that completely changed my life." Jake leaned forward, intrigued. "What was it?" The teacher wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it to Jake. "Ichigyo-Zammai." Jake looked at the paper, confused. Where are you from?" "Ichigyo-Zammai. It's a concept from Zen Buddhism. It literally means concentration on a single action. It's the practice of doing one thing at a time, with total attention, as if you and the action were one." Jake frowned. "Like, just focusing on one thing?" "It's not just about focusing, Jake. It's about becoming the thing you're doing. When you're studying math, you're not Jake studying math. You are math. There's no separation. There's no you observing the task from the outside. You immerse yourself completely." Jake still seemed confused. Mr. Tanaka noticed and continued. "Let me explain it another way. Have you ever started a video game and then realized 3 hours had passed? Yes, this always happens. So, you entered a state of flow. You were so immersed that you lost track of time. Ichigyo-Zammai is learning to intentionally enter this state in any activity." Jake felt a chill down his spine. That made sense. "And does it work, like scientifically?" Mr. Tanaka smiled. Yes. Today, neuroscience calls this mindfulness or flow state. There are dozens of studies showing that when you practice focused attention, you change the structure of your brain. It increases the density of the prefrontal cortex, which is the region responsible for controlling attention. He opened a drawer and took out some printed articles. "Look, I have some materials here. Articles that combine Ichigyo-Zammai with behavioral neuroscience techniques. Take them home, study them, apply them, and tell me what happens." Jake picked up the papers, his hands trembling. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him told him that this would change everything. "Thank you, Mr. Tanaka, seriously. Thank you very much." The teacher placed his hand on Jake's shoulder. "Jake, you have what it takes. You just need to learn how to focus your attention, and when you learn that, nothing will stop you." Chapter 3. Applying Ichigyo-Zammai. That night, Jake didn't sleep much. He stayed up late reading the articles that Mr. Tanaka had given him, and the more he read, the more everything made sense. One of the articles talked about how our brain works, how with every distraction, Every notification, every change of task, our brain needs to expend energy to reset and refocus. And the more you do this, the more you train your brain to be distracted. Another article explained the Pomodoro technique, combined with Ichigyo-Zammai. Blocks of a few minutes of total concentration, followed by 5 or 10 minutes of conscious pause. No picking up your cell phone during the break. No checking social media. Just breathing, stretching, drinking water, being present. Another article discussed choice architecture. Basically, you modify your environment to make distractions impossible. Cell phone in another room, notifications turned off, only one tab open, only one task at a time. He discovered that Ichigyo-Zammai is about completely immersing yourself in the activity you are doing now, without dividing your mind. It's not simply doing one thing at a time in the practical sense. It's a total union between you and the action. When you are sweeping the floor, you are the act of sweeping. When you are eating, you are the act of eating. Zen monks apply this to everything, from mundane tasks like washing dishes to formal meditation. There's a famous Zen saying that illustrates this. When I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep. It seems obvious, but how many times do we eat thinking about work or go to sleep dwelling on problems? Our modern culture values doing 1,000 things at once. Ichigyo-Zammai is the radical opposite of that. The idea is that when you fragment your attention, you're not truly present in any of the activities. You become superficial in everything. In that perspective, when distraction arises and will arise, the practitioner simply acknowledges, "My mind wandered," and gently returns to the current activity. No guilt, no frustration. It's a constant practice of bringing the mind back. After learning all of this, Jake realized something important. He wasn't weak or lazy. He just had never learned how to use his attention correctly. And then he decided. From that day on, everything would change. The following Monday, Jake came home from school and did something he had never done before. He created a ritual. He put his cell phone in a drawer in another room. He turned off all computer notifications. He closed all browser tabs, leaving only one open with his study material. He set a 25-minute timer, and he took 3 deep breaths. Then he began. And the first 5 minutes were awful. Her mind was screaming, "Check your phone, see if anyone texted you, quickly open YouTube." But Jake remembered what he had read. When distraction arises, you don't fight it, you simply observe. My mind wants to wander, and gently bring your attention back. He did that about 10 times in the first 25 minutes. However, in the second 25-minute block, distractions decreased. In the third, he entered a state of concentration he had never experienced before. When the timer rang, Jake looked at the clock and couldn't believe it. 75 minutes had passed, and he had made more progress in 1 hour than he normally did in an entire week. He felt a surge of energy, of power. For the first time in a long time, he felt he was in control. In the following days, Jake maintained the ritual. Every day upon arriving home, the same process. Cell phone out, environment prepared, breathing, total focus. And he went even further. He applied Ichigyo-Zammai to everything. When he ate, he focused on the act of eating. He didn't watch videos while eating. When he talked to someone, he was totally present. When he walked to school, he paid attention to the sounds, the colors, the movement. He realized he'd lived his whole life on autopilot. And now what? Now he was awake. His friends noticed the change. "Jake, man, you don't hang out with us anymore. Is everything all right?" Jake smiled. "Everything is great. I'm just focused on something bigger right now." They didn't understand, but Jake didn't care because for the first time, he was building the future he wanted instead of just dreaming about it. And then came the first math test after this transformation. Jake sat down, looked at the questions, and entered the state. Ichigyo-Zammai. He wasn't Jake taking the test, he was mathematics solving itself through him. When the professor returned the tests the following week, Jake looked at the paper and froze. Jake had gotten an A. He had never received such a high grade in his life. Mr. Tanaka looked at him from across the room and smiled, and Jake understood. This was just the beginning. Chapter 4. The Climb, from High School to MIT. The following months were a roller coaster. Jake continued practicing Ichigyo-Zammai every day. His grades started to rise consistently. Grade A in physics, grade A in chemistry, grade A in programming. His parents were in shock. "Jake, what happened to you?" "I just learned how to focus, Mom." But that wasn't all. Jake had learned something much deeper. He had learned that discipline isn't about willpower, it's about systems. It's about creating an environment and a routine that make it impossible to fail. He had learned that distraction is not the enemy. Distraction is just a sign that your mind is tired or bored or afraid. And when you understand that, you stop fighting and start working with your brain, not against it. At the end of the year, Jake applied to MIT. His friends still mocked him. "Dude, you've improved, but MIT, that's crazy. Do you know how many brilliant people get rejected every year?" Jake just smiled. "I know, but I also know I'll do my best. And the rest is out of my control." He applied the same philosophy to test preparation. SATs, essays, programming projects, everything in its own time, with complete attention. And then, 6 months later, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, Jake received an email. "Congratulations, you have been admitted to MIT." He read the sentence 3 times before believing it. Then he screamed. He screamed so loudly that his parents came running into the room. "I passed, I got into MIT." His mother started to cry. His father hugged him tightly. And Jake felt a deep gratitude, not only for the acceptance but for having learned something that went beyond any college. He had learned to master his attention. And whoever masters their attention, masters their life. Chapter 5. Beyond MIT. The journey continues. Getting into MIT was incredible. But Jake soon realized something. Being there wasn't enough. The level of demand, the amount of work, the competition, it was another universe. But Jake had an advantage. While other students struggled with distractions, procrastination, and anxiety, Jake had Ichigyo-Zammai. He maintained the ritual. Every day before studying, the same process. Clean environment, cell phone away, 3 deep breaths. And then, total immersion. He applied the technique to everything. In programming projects, in algorithms classes, in group work. And the teachers started to notice, "Jake, your attention to detail is impressive. You don't miss a thing." Because Jake had understood something fundamental. Talent is important, but attention is power. During his 4 years of college, Jake wasn't the most brilliant student, but he was one of the most consistent. And consistency, in the long run, beats disorganized genius. He graduated with honors. And soon after, he landed a job as a junior programmer at a tech company. And look, Jake could have relaxed. He could have thought, "I did it, now I can slow down." But he didn't do that. Because he had learned something essential. Everything is a process. There is no finish line. There is only the next step. So he applied Ichigyo-Zammai to his work. Every line of code was written with complete attention. Every meeting he was 100% present. Every project he immersed himself deeply. And within 2 years, Jake was promoted to full-stack programmer. 3 years later, he became a senior programmer. At 28, he was a team leader. His colleagues were asking, "Jake, what's your secret? How are you so consistent?" And Jake always answered the same thing. "I'm not smarter than you. I've just learned to eliminate distractions and be present. One thing at a time. Total attention." Chapter 6. The science behind. But hold on a minute, you might be thinking, "Okay, good story, but does it really work? Or is it just motivational talk?" Let's get to the facts. According to a study published by neuroscientists at Harvard University, the regular practice of mindfulness, which is exactly what Ichigyo-Zammai proposes, increases the density of gray matter in the prefrontal cortex. This means that your brain literally changes structure. The region responsible for planning, impulse control, and focus becomes stronger. Another study conducted by researchers at Stanford University showed that people who practice focused attention have up to a 40% reduction in the activation of the brain's default mode network. This is the network that remains active when your mind wanders, when you're thinking about the past or the future, when you get distracted. In other words, the practice of Ichigyo-Zammai literally shuts down the distraction center of your brain. And there's more. A neuroscientist with years of experience specializing in neuroplasticity stated in an interview, "The human brain is incredibly adaptable. When you consistently train your attention, you're not just improving a skill, you're rewiring neural circuits. You're creating information superhighways where before there were only trails." In other words, every time you bring your attention back when it wanders, you are literally building a stronger brain. And look, this isn't mysticism, it's pure neuroscience. The Pomodoro technique combined with Ichigyo-Zammai has been used by programmers, writers. Why? Because it works. When you remove distractions from your environment, when you work in focused time blocks, when you bring your attention back every time it wanders, you're doing the equivalent of a workout for your brain. And just as your muscles grow when you lift weights, your attention grows when you train it. Do you know what's the craziest thing about Ichigyo-Zammai? It's not just about productivity. It's not just about doing more in less time. It's about truly living. Think about it. How many times have you eaten an entire meal and not even remembered the taste? How many times have you watched a movie but been checking your phone at the same time? How many conversations have you had with people you love, but your mind was elsewhere? We're living on autopilot. We're letting life pass us by while we're distracted. And the Ichigyo-Zammai, it wakes you up. When you learn to be fully present, you not only work better, you live better. Food tastes better. Conversations have more depth. Experiences become richer. It's almost like stepping out of the matrix and seeing the real world for the first time. And there's a detail that will surprise you. Studies show that people who practice mindfulness report much higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. Why? Because happiness doesn't come from simply having more things. It comes from being present in what you already have. Jake learned this and it changed everything. So where is Jake today? He still works at the same company. He's still a team leader, but more importantly, he's a completely different person from that 16-year-old boy who couldn't concentrate for 5 minutes. Jake teaches Ichigyo-Zammai to his team members. He sees the same results happening. People who are previously average now deliver exceptional work. People who lived under stress now have mental clarity. And look, Jake isn't special. He didn't have an absurdly high IQ. He didn't come from a wealthy family. He didn't have connections. He only learned one thing that most people never learn: how to direct his attention. And this is the truth no one tells you. Success doesn't come from having more time. It comes from using the time you have better. It's not about having more resources. It's about focusing on the resources you already have. It's not about being smarter. It's about being more present. Because ultimately your life is made up of moments. And if you're not present in your moments, you're not living your life. You're just watching it pass by. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future content. I also invite you to watch the other videos on the channel. I believe their content might help you too. And remember, one thing at a time. Full attention. That's how you change the game. Be present. Walk with honor. Follow the path. See you in the next video.